Today at 1, former BBC News presenter Huw Edwards pleads guilty to making indecent images of children. Arriving at court today, he admitted to 3 counts, with at least one involving a child aged between 7 and 9 years old.
He was one of the most trusted faces in broadcasting. How damaging is Huw Edwards' fall from grace for the BBC?
Our other main story this lunchtime, the mother of one of the 3 girls killed in Southport calls for calm on the streets. Tributes pour in for Alice da Silva Aguiar, B.B. King and Elsie Stankham, who were killed at a dance class on Monday. Overnight, more than 50 police officers were injured in violent clashes. Today, the community joins forces to repair the damage.
Here in Southport, residents have been clearing up the street with their bare hands, sweeping up bricks, bottles and glass to restore their neighbourhood.
Hamas says one of its most senior leaders has been killed in an Israeli raid on his residence in Iran. Finally goes ahead, and in rowing, the women's quadruple were involved in a dramatic photo finish.
And it doesn't get bigger than this. It's really quite overwhelming to just experience this, but be really grateful.
Coming up on Sports Day, later in the hour on BBC News, we'll have more from the Olympics. More British medals as Team GB secures bronze in the diving pool with Andrea Spendolini-Siriex and Lois Toulson.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. The former BBC presenter Huw Edwards has pleaded guilty to 3 counts of making indecent images of children, one as young as 7 to 9 years old. He was arrested last November and charged last month before making the plea this morning at Westminster Magistrates Court. Our senior UK correspondent Seema Katecha is there for us now. Seema, what more do we know?
Afternoon, Sally. Yes, Huw Edwards made himself into court at just after 9 a.m. this morning. He was flanked by several police officers who led him in through the double doors behind me. Here, the court heard he was sent the images in a WhatsApp chat with another man today. 41 of those images were indecent images, we were told. They mainly included children between the ages of 12. At least 2 of the images involved children aged between 7 and 9 years old. Now, his lawyer told the court there was no suggestion that he had made any of these images himself. Now, the judge said he wouldn't sentence Mr. Edwards today, that there needed to be a probation report, and that he wanted to hear more about him, his motivation, and whether there was a risk of re-offending. He's scheduled to be back in court on the 16th of September.
Huw Edwards, for decades the calm, trusted face of BBC News, walking into court charged with making indecent images of children. Minutes later, he would plead guilty to all 3 charges. 41 images, 7 Class A, the most serious classification. To the crowds outside, there was no visible emotion, just the familiar demeanour of one of television's best-known faces. For 20 years, he fronted the news at 10.
Tonight at 10, thousands of police officers...
He's also been the face of the BBC for elections.
So, as Big Ben reaches 10 o'clock...
Political crises.
We're live in Downing Street, where...
And royal and state occasions.
Welcome to Windsor.
But a newspaper headline changed everything. The media frenzy of last July followed a series of articles published in The Sun, alleging that an unnamed BBC presenter was paying a young person to send photographs described by The Sun as sordid images. Police eventually concluded there was no evidence of illegality, and a statement from Huw Edwards' wife finally revealed his name to the public, a decision she said was out of concern for his mental well-being. He remained off-air for another 9 months until in April it was announced he'd resigned from the corporation on medical advice. It was the end of a career that had taken him from reporting on politics for BBC Wales to being made a lead presenter of BBC TV News and become one of the most familiar faces on British television.
There are 650 MPs.
When he was given the job of presenting the BBC's TV election coverage of 2019, It was the first change of host in 40 years. He occupied a role that demanded reliability, trustworthiness, dignity for those era-defining moments. Here, the minutes just before the announcement of the death of the Queen. Contrast that with today, a man who we've learnt this week was arrested in November, charged in June, and today pleaded guilty to those charges. He had already resigned, but he was, to the public, still one of the faces of the BBC. This is more than just the end of a career and a reputation destroyed. David Sillito, BBC News.
Well, our culture and media editor Katie Razzle is outside the BBC in London for us now. Katie, so how significant is this latest development?
Well, I think it is really difficult to underestimate the significance of this. As David Sillito was saying, this was a man who, through a 40-year career, held our hand through some of the most important, most momentous, most landmark times for our nation. So not just as a presenter of News at 10, but also as the person who narrated the coronation, who took us through, announced the death of the Queen, and of course the man who was picked to lead those election programmes after David Dimbleby retired. Now, because of that responsibility, the trust that the BBC placed in him, he was also, according to the BBC's annual report that came out only last year, the third highest paid person in the BBC when it comes to the presenting talent. That meant that he was on a salary of up to presenting talent. That meant that he was on a salary of up to £480,000 even after he'd been suspended. It now emerges that he was still being paid even after he had been arrested in last November. So there are, it just is a spectacular, spectacular fall from grace for somebody who embodied all those values that the BBC holds dear, whether that's trust, responsibility. He even got a £40,000 pay rise during the time that he was suspended, and that raised eyebrows even before the news of this arrest. I think, put simply, he was the face of the most trusted news brand in the UK. And now, after this spectacular fall from grace, these guilty pleas have thrown all of that into question.
So, Katie, what does this mean now for his former employers, the BBC?
Well, I think this is reputationally damaging for the BBC. How bad depends on what they knew and when. I think there are some key questions for the BBC. When did they learn of his arrest? Did they know about it during the investigation into what happened that was announced last year? Did they know about it, or were they kept in the dark? Why was he still being paid 5 months after he was arrested last November? And will the BBC try to recoup some money from his salary as a result of that? There are, of course, questions for Huw Edwards too. Did he inform the BBC? But clearly, in the end, this is not what the BBC wants to happen. We have put these questions to the BBC. We are still in the dark about what the answers are. But once we know, we will, of course, bring it to everybody.
Katie Razzle, thank you very much indeed. The mother of one of the 3 girls killed in Southport has called for calm on the streets. Violence broke out just hours after the community came together for a peaceful vigil. Overnight, more than 50 police officers were injured. It followed the attack on Monday. 9-year-old Alice De Silva Aguirre, 6-year-old BB King and Elsie Stankham, who was 7, were all killed. But last night, Elsie's mum intervened. She asked those involved to please stop, adding that the police have been nothing but heroic, saying they and we don't need this. 27 police officers were treated in hospital after protesters, believed to be members of a far-right group, attacked a mosque after seeing disinformation on social media. Well, shortly we will be joined by our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford, who has been looking at the events of last night. But first, let's speak to our correspondent Lauren Moss, who is also in Southport for us now. Lauren, tributes continuing to be paid this morning.
They are. I mean, there is very much a clean-up operation in this area of Southport, as you can see behind me, which we'll talk more about in a moment. but there is also still mourning here today. As soon as the sun started rising, people were turning out of their homes again and driving here to leave more flowers, teddy bears, scarves and tributes to the 3 little girls and those who were critically injured in Monday's attack, which took place just around the corner from where I'm standing. And I read one poem to one of the adults who was injured trying to protect the children, who's fighting for her life in hospital, calling her Southport's hero. Thousands of people turned out for the vigil last night, and a book of condolence has opened today. Our first report is from Chichi Izundu.
This is 9-year-old Alice de Silva Agia, described by her head teacher as the happiest of souls and a true ray of sunshine. This is 6-year-old Bibi King, described by her head teacher as one of our brightest and most wonderful shining stars. And this is 7-year-old Elsie Dot Stankham, described by her teacher as a caring, charismatic young lady who loved to please. And in her grief, Elsie's mum Jenny pleaded for calm following a night of rioting, saying stop the violence in Southport tonight. The police had been nothing but heroic. Last night, thousands gathered at a vigil to remember the 3 who'd lost their lives and the 7 other children and 2 adults still being treated in hospital. And today, the tributes continue to come.
I've got a big building site to unlock and I want to see the lads safely at work. They're all worried that the kids go on the streets everywhere, everyone who I know. I'm shocked by this.
I've actually gone through this myself. My niece was murdered, stabbed to death 4 years ago. And it's just kind of to see this brings it all back. And I just can't imagine, I do know what the families are going through, but it's a horrible feeling.
Southport is still coming to terms with the attack. This community is still in shock, now trying to find ways to express their feelings. A book of condolences has been opened to allow people to add to their thoughts and messages already being left by the police cordon.
It's a community of resilience. It's a community that cares for each other. It's a community that have come together to share their grief and show their support to each other.
Southport is in healing, mourning together, remembering all of those affected by the horror of Monday's attack. Chichi Izundu, BBC News.
Well, Sally, after that peaceful vigil last night in Southport, violent disorder broke out on the streets behind me. And as you can see, there is a huge clean-up operation, but I've been speaking to people who saw what happened here. One elderly woman who didn't want to be named and go on camera told me she saw crowds of people peeling the tiles from the pavement outside her home with their hands and kicking them and then throwing them at buildings. The wheelie bins had been left out here last night for bin day, and they were used to put objects in and set on fire. A shop has been ransacked and thousands of pounds worth of goods stolen. But, you know, this is a community that is standing against what happened here last night and standing against the violence that we saw here on Monday. They were here at dawn. I watched them clearing up the streets, sweeping the streets, trying to pick up the bottles and the glass and the bricks that had been left here overnight, and the smell of burning smoke still hung bitterly in the air. And that was before the authorities, that you can see behind me, in the fire service and the council turned up. And today they've been handing out toast and drinks and food to the police. They've been handing out toast and drinks and food to the police, to those taking part in the clean-up operation, and even to journalists like myself. Our next report comes from Sean Dilley.
They've hardly had time to digest Monday's senseless attack. Now they're working to cleanse the streets of last night's violence.
But what they did from last night, this totally shocked, and I feel unsafe to stay in Southport really. Before I just feel okay because it's quiet area, and I never seen in Southport happen. And now I'm just thinking about future, what's gonna be happen. So
Police say these walls were torn down by rioters in search of missiles to launch. More than 50 officers were injured, 27 were taken to hospital and 3 police dogs were hurt. The chief executive of the College of Policing, Sir Andy Marsh, said, "Last night we witnessed disgusting scenes where a minority of thugs chose to use this appalling tragedy to bring violence to the streets of a devastated community. I'm very grateful to the officers who dealt with this inexcusable violence and to those from surrounding forces." These violent scenes could not contrast more with the community's vigil for Monday's dead and injured. Authorities say disorder was sparked by disinformation on social media claiming that there was an Islamic link to the attack. Police say there was none.
Frankly, the scenes of thuggery that we have seen on the streets of Southport this evening bear no relation to the way in which the Southport community has been coming together to support each other and to support grieving families.
Today, Southport's mosque assesses the damage to its building. The emotional cost, though, difficult to put into words.
It was terrifying. It was absolutely awful, horrendous. We couldn't understand this viciousness that was going on, and even the police were taking a hammering from this lot.
The violence has been condemned by politicians and police, but also by a community struggling to digest why Southport was targeted on Monday. They simply can't understand why they've been targeted like this. Sean Dilley, BBC News.
Well, our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford has been following the disorder and joins us now from Southport. So, Daniel, what is the latest in the criminal investigation?
Well, in terms of the criminal investigation into the disorder, then obviously the police will be poring over the footage that they will have taken last night, both from the helicopter and on the ground, and trying to identify those responsible. But of course, last night's disorder was really a distraction from the most terrible event in the town this week, and that was the murder of 3 young girls who'd attended a Taylor Swift dance event. And that's really what Merseyside police want to be concentrating on. And today, they were granted an extension for the time that they're allowed to detain the 17-year-old suspect who was arrested at the scene beyond what initially it would be 24 hours an hour, and now it's gone way beyond 48 hours. So they're quite unusually, I should say, for somebody as young as 17. They're now into beyond 48 hours in custody, allowing them to question him before they make a decision whether or not to charge him. And just a reminder of what we do know about the custody, the suspect in custody. He's 17 years old. He was born in Cardiff to parents who'd moved to the UK from Rwanda, and he'd been living in Southport since 2013. He also had an elder brother who grew up here. So police still have not made a decision on charging, and that's something they've now got an extension to make a decision on.
Daniel, thank you very much indeed. The time is 18 minutes past 1. Our top story for you this afternoon. Former BBC News presenter Huw Edwards pleads guilty to making indecent images of children. He admitted to 3 counts, with at least 1 involving a child aged between 7 and 9 years old. At the Olympics, it is double gold for Team GB. Alex Yee wins the men's triathlon as it finally went ahead. And in rowing, the women's quadruple were involved in a dramatic photo finish.
And coming up on Sports Day in the next 20 minutes on BBC News, there could be more medals for Team GB on the 5th day of the Paris Olympics. World champion Kieran Riley is favourite in the freestyle BMX.
Hamas has announced that one of its top leaders, Ismail Haniyeh, has been killed in Iran. In a statement, the Palestinian group, designated a terrorist organisation by the UK and other Western governments, said he was killed in an Israeli raid on an official residence in Tehran. Well, our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell is in Jerusalem for us today. Yolande, what has Israel said?
Well, Israel is not formally taking responsibility for this assassination. The Israeli military told me earlier that it doesn't comment on reports in the foreign media. But since the 7th of October, those deadly attacks on Israel, Hamas-led attacks, Israel has made no secret of the fact that it's going after Hamas leaders. And from what we understand, at 2 o'clock in the morning, local time, Ismail Haniyeh and his bodyguard, that they were killed in Tehran by a rocket attack. We've got very few details of exactly what happened. Of course, this would have involved very precise intelligence. We had one Hamas official who quickly came out saying that this was a cowardly act and that it would not go unanswered. This is really an attack that could have a big impact on the war in Gaza, and with Iran now weighing up its response, I think this could also have a dangerous wider regional escalation.
State media in Iran reporting the assassination in its capital of this top Hamas leader. A VIP guest, Ismail Haniyeh had been in Tehran along with the heads of other regional armed groups backed by Iran for the inauguration of the country's new president. But these were to be his last ever public appearances. In Gaza today, news of the killings worried many Palestinians about the implications for ending nearly 10 months of war with Israel.
If the leaders die, the political leaders, where are we going? Children are dying, the elderly are dying, the youth are dying. No one is looking out for us.
I hope this will be the last assassination, and God willing, the war will end after this assassination. We are all tired.
Ismail Haniyeh was from Gaza, but had recently lived in Qatar. He was seen as more pragmatic than hardline Hamas leaders still in the Palestinian territory, and had been overseeing talks on a ceasefire and the release of Israeli hostages. Now hostage families fear a setback.
I don't know how this news affects the deal, but I really wish for all of the forces around the world that will gather in order to bring our people back home. I hope our politicians will know to make this news into the release of the hostages.
Just hours before the Tehran attack, Israel had targeted a senior Hezbollah commander in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. It said he was responsible for a deadly rocket strike in the occupied Golan Heights last weekend. Fears were already running high about the possibility of retaliation and a wider war. Now, with Iran announcing 3 days of mourning for Ismail Haniyeh and vowing a harsh and painful response, the Middle East is even more on edge. Yolande Nell, BBC News, Jerusalem.
We can speak now to our Gaza correspondent, Rushdie Abu-Alouf. Rushdie, what does this mean?
It's a very difficult time for Hamas, and we have seen Hamas briefly suspended the ceasefire talks back in December when they killed the deputy of Ismail Haniyeh. This is far more complicated issue for Hamas because Ismail Haniyeh is the overall leader of the movement, and he was considered for a long time as less extremist than somebody like Yahya Sinwar in Gaza. He might be the new Hamas leader. So the killing of Ismail Haniyeh is paving the way for more extremist figure within Hamas. For Hamas now, it's time to make a funeral for Haniyeh, and then they will try to, as soon as possible, as the Hamas leader told me, to decide who is going to be the new leader for Hamas. But this is no doubt is going to affect the ceasefire negotiation.
Rushdie, thank you very much indeed. To Paris now and the Olympics, where Team GB have won 2 more gold medals this morning, both in dramatic circumstances. The first came in the men's triathlon, the next in the rowing. The women's quad sculls won their final by the very tightest of margins after a photo finish. Our sports news correspondent Laura Scott is in Paris for us. Laura.
Well, Sally, what we have witnessed here in Paris was quite remarkable. Alex Yee won silver in the men's triathlon. He would leave here with no regrets. And it was a truly stunning gold to follow the bronze medal won by his teammate Beth Potter in the women's triathlon. With a roundup of all the medals from here in Paris, here's my colleague Joe Linsky.
The great Olympic morning of fight-backs at the finish. 2 more British golds are now on the tally. The way there for both was through twists at the end. At the start of the day, it was a breakthrough to get racing. At 4 a.m. on the Seine, Triathlon got the all clear. After doubts around the water, they were now out of the blocks.
Away they go.
This 1,500-metre swim was an image for these games, but a challenge for the athletes. They fought through the currents and brushed past the boats. Britain's Beth Potter got out in 5th, but wasn't yet in the dry.
Potter on her way.
Switch to this sport had now brought her to this.
Potter gets the bronze.
This date has been in the diary for a year. And I was like relieved to wake up this morning and be like, it's today. We can do it today. We can get it done.
Britain's Alex Yee found it hard through the river. By the run, he was in a shootout for gold. Hayden Wilde of New Zealand went to the front, but this was 10k of tactics, and Yee.
2.5k, I thought, I'm going to give myself one last chance at this and not give up. And yeah, here we are. And I'm still a bit lost for words.
Downstream on the Seine, Britain's quad had
next, but when you kind of get to the end of a cycle like this and it doesn't get bigger than this, it's really quite overwhelming to just experience this, but be really grateful.
10 metres in the air, this was a tense end to the synchro. Lois Toulson and Andrea Spendolini-Syriacs affirmed this is how much it meant for Spendolini-Syriacs and her dad, Fred. At her second Olympics, a first date with the podium, an extraordinary morning of twists, turns and tears. Joe Linsky, BBC News.
Tokyo, rowing was a complete flop. There wasn't a single gold, as you heard in Joe's piece there, for the first time since 1980. But here already, day one, golds in the bag, and Britain are actually favourites in more of the finals to come. So we're just about 20 minutes from Disneyland Paris here. We could be seeing plenty more fairy tale endings out on the lake.
Natalie, thanks very much indeed. King Charles has paid a visit to Fosinard Flows in the Scottish Highlands this morning. He is patron of the RSPB and spent time speaking to staff and volunteers about their research and conservation work before watching a musical performance by a small group. The US presidential hopeful Kamala Harris has taken her campaign to Georgia, a state which some Democrats consider up for grabs in the election. She dared Donald Trump to hold a debate with her if, as expected, she wins the Democrat nomination for the White House. The broadcast regulator Ofcom has found a decline in the number of people who watch traditional television has accelerated over the last 12 months. It found a quarter of the population didn't watch any linear channels each week, as many turned to platforms like YouTube, TikTok and Instagram. A reminder of our top stories this afternoon. Former BBC News presenter Huw Edwards pleads guilty to making indecent images of children. He admitted to 3 counts, with at least one involving a child aged between 7 and 9 years old. After violent clashes overnight in Southport, today the community joins forces to repair the damage. Now it's time to join our colleagues with the news where you are.
Hello there, I'm Ollie Foster. Here's what's coming up for you on Sports Day. Great Britain triathlon Olympic champion. There's been history in the women's quadruple sculls. They take gold in a photo finish, and Great Britain make it count with... Hello there, Great Britain have had a fantastic morning. The Sport app. I'll be back throughout the rest of the afternoon, keeping across the Olympics. But for now, goodbye.
Welcome back. Dogs are being recruited to help rewild a local nature reserve in East Sussex. by wearing rucksacks to spread seeds as they explore. The project was inspired by wolves who would inadvertently transport and sow wildflower and grass seeds in their fur. Our reporter Victoria Cook has been to Lewis to find out more.
Dry and bare. Signs this woodland's been well used and loved. Well, bringing it back to life is a mission of the Wildlife Trust that runs this nature reserve. Hundreds of years ago, wolves would have roamed the countryside and spread wild seeds. But now extinct, the team here are turning to help from local pet dogs.
So the idea is that we replicate the impacts that wolves used to have on this landscape here in this small urban nature reserve. We don't have wolves in the UK anymore, sadly. They went extinct around about 1740, so not that long ago. But in this particular nature reserve, we have kind of lots of wolf proxies, really. We have lots of dogs.
The idea is simple. Dog walkers collect a backpack full of seeds, the pack is clipped on, and dogs are left to run around and sprinkle the seed as they go.
It's been a wonderful way to engage the local dog walking community really positively in this trial area because they're part of the solution rather than being seen as a bit of a problem. And then the dogs can really run around off the leash in this area and they get into little nooks and crannies spreading the seed and sort of randomising the spread of the seed in a way that wouldn't happen when humans are doing it.
The team here hope this trial could even inspire others, maybe other nature reserves, to try something similar, perhaps use their own rewilding project to help increase biodiversity. Victoria Cook, BBC News.
Well, doesn't it look beautiful in East Sussex? Let's see what the weather is like for everybody else too. Here's Darren.
Thanks very much, Sally. Good afternoon. Well, the heat wave continues today across some parts of the country. We've got some strong sunshine around. Make hay while the sun shines. People busy in the fields, farmers. But things are maybe going to break down a bit as we head through tonight and into tomorrow, particularly across England and Wales, where we've got the risk of some heavy rain and some thunderstorms. Difficult to tie the details down just yet, because those storms haven't arrived, they haven't developed. But we have had some angry-looking cloud here across the southeast of England with some showers not far away. The odd showers just creeping into parts of Wales, and by the end of the day, maybe one or two for Northern Ireland as well. But for many places, it's still dry. The temperatures are not changing very much across the northern half of the UK. It's hotter further south. But today, as compared with yesterday, we've got more of an easterly breeze, and that's pushing the highest of the temperatures just that little bit further towards the west. Things will start to change though overnight tonight, because we've got this wet weather coming into Northern Ireland and Scotland. Showers breaking out ahead of that. It could get particularly wet across northern England and the Midlands later, with some thunder and lightning and much more cloud around, which will keep temperatures higher than last night in Scotland, where it was 5 degrees at Glasgow. It'll be perhaps no lower than 17 in the southeast of England. Heavy rain, perhaps thundery rain to start the day across the Midlands and northern England. That moves away. Get a bit of sunshine coming through. That will trigger some heavy and thundery showers across England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Seeing more sunshine coming out during the afternoon, and generally dry here, so a smidge warmer than it was today. But further south, those temperatures are starting to drop away. It all depends on those storms, but it still could be very warm, if not hot, in some places. And then as we head towards the end of the week, we end with low pressure more dominant, so quite a significant change on the way. Still could be some sharp showers around to begin with on Friday morning. Those should then move away, and then we look to the west to see the stickling cloud, the wind picking up a bit, and some rain beginning to push in as well. And that will keep temperatures a bit lower for the western side of the UK. But through the Midlands and eastern England, Friday is still going to be Scotland. Showers breaking out ahead of that. It could get particularly wet across northern England and the Midlands later, with some thunder and lightning and much more cloud around, which will keep temperatures higher than last night in Scotland, where it was 5 degrees at Glasgow. It'll be perhaps no lower than 17 in the southeast of England. Heavy rain, perhaps thundery rain to start the day across the Midlands and northern England. That moves away. Get a bit of sunshine coming through. That will trigger some heavy and thundery showers across England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Seeing more sunshine coming out during the afternoon, and generally dry here, so a smidge warmer than it was today. But further south, those temperatures are starting to drop away. It all depends on those storms, but it still could be very warm, if not hot, in some places. places. And then as we head towards the end of the week, we end with low pressure more dominant, so quite a significant change on the way. Still could be some sharp showers around to begin with on Friday morning. Those should then move away, and then we look to the west to see the stickling cloud, the wind picking up a bit, and some rain beginning to push in as well. And that will keep temperatures a bit lower for the western side of the UK, but through the Midlands and eastern England, Friday is still going to be a very warm day, temperatures reaching 27 or 28 degrees. Now, once that weather front moves from west to east and takes the rain across with it, we follow that with more of a west to southwesterly breeze, and that will bring in cooler and fresher air as we head towards the weekend. Another area of low pressure perhaps bringing rain towards the northwest. And over the weekend, most of the wet weather will be across the northwest of the UK. Showers on Saturday with some wetter, windy weather later on Sunday. Head towards the southeast and we'll start the weekend with some rain. Once that then moves away, the rest of the weekend should be dry, but those temperatures are going to be lower and near normal for this time of the year. Back to you, Sally.
Darren, thanks very much. That is it from us on today's BBC News at 1. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.
You're watching BBC News. Hello, I'm Azadeh Mashiri. Huw Edwards, once the BBC's most senior news presenter, has pleaded guilty to 3 counts of making indecent images of children. According to the Crown Prosecution Service, making indecent images can have a wide definition in the law and can include receiving them on social media. Huw Edwards admitted having 41 indecent images of children, which had been sent to him by another man on WhatsApp. Westminster Magistrates Court heard today. They included 7 Category A images, the most serious classification. Until last year, Edwards was one of the main presenters on BBC One's News heard today. They included 7 Category A images, events. He was arrested last November and charged last month. He'll be sentenced on the 16th of September and a probation report will be compiled. Well, we're getting reaction from different agencies to the news. The Internet Watch Foundation Deputy CEO Heidi Kempster has said in a statement, there can be no excuse. This is criminal material, including images depicting the most extreme category of sexual abuse, which have real and lasting effects on victims. A child's journey to recovery can be dealt a devastating blow when they know images of their abuse continue to be circulated online for others to view. Well, let's cross live to Dan Sexton. He's the Chief Technology Officer at the Internet Watch Foundation. Dan, thank you for your time. Now, that statement we just read talked about the real and lasting effects on victims. Could you tell us more about that?
I can. This is really shocking news for many, but unfortunately, this is all too common in our work. At IWF, our role is to find, assess, remove images and videos of children being sexually abused from the internet. And we've seen millions of images like this are just openly distributed across the internet. And these are real victims. These are children that have been abused. Some of them survived that abuse and have grown up and their content is still being distributed and consumed. And we see that them being re-victimized again and again every time that image is shared.
And Dan, what safeguards are there to prevent this from happening? We did hear in this case the mention of WhatsApp, for example.
Well, one of the most frustrating things for me working technology to prevent child sexual abuse online is that these are preventable crimes. We have the technology to identify particularly known images and videos and stop the distribution. The issue is that some technology companies, and unfortunately private messaging is one of those, are refusing to deploy that technology. Really frustrating. Those images of those victims that have been distributed, that have been found in these systems, on these phones, there's nothing stopping those same images, those same children victims, their imagery being shared again today and tomorrow and the next day. So that what needs to happen, what we're looking for, and what the Online Safety Act hopefully will do when it comes into force is put that technology across all the platforms. So once we find these images of these victims, we can stop them being distributed ever again. So this should not happen.
And Dan, there has also been a warning recently from Ofcom, hasn't there been, that almost a quarter of children aged 5 to 7 have a smartphone of their own. What role does that technology play in all of this?
Well, the wide availability of smartphones, social media devices, etc. These are ways that people are being contacted, groomed to create more content. So our challenge here at the IWF, we want to see a safer internet free of child sexual abuse, is both to prevent the creation of new images and videos of abuse of children and to find and stop the distribution of existing. The techniques are slightly different for both. Both of them, I think, have a technological element, and there's a place to play for the technology companies particularly to help engage with and prevent both the creation of content and to prevent the distribution once it's been created.
All right, Dan Sexton, Chief Technology Officer at the Internet Watch Foundation. Thank you for your time there and all the information you provided there about the impact this can have on children. Now, we're receiving more reaction. Of course, Huw Edwards was a big figure with a very big presence here at the BBC, but also across the country. And in a statement, a spokesperson for the NSPCC, the leading children's charity, said online child sexual abuse offences can have a devastating impact on victims, and we should be in no doubt about the seriousness of Huw Edwards' crimes. It can be extremely traumatic for young people to know sexual images of themselves have been shared online. We also need to see online platforms